Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Inside Area 51. We've got a bit of a different show this week as we bring on people from every podcast, except for Josh. We're missing Josh today, but we've got everybody else here to weigh in on the that happened on Point Shot this weekend. So we're here with some representation for Team Sean and for Team Malcolm. But of course, Inside Area 51, as always, brought to you by High Stick Vodka and Bench Clears. If you go to benchclears.com right now and use the promo code Area51 sent me, you can get 10% off on your order. So that's, of course, all their air mesh style tanks and shorts. As it gets hot, I know it's 50 degrees out today here in Kamloops. It's pretty toasty. So definitely good weather to be representing your team, even if you're not in the playoffs all year round. So, hey guys, welcome to the show.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. Team Sean, I love it.
Yeah. Are you in witness protection right now? You have to write everything down. Can't speak out loud. All right.
I've got them
I
signed.
usually sound like I'm in a cave, so I just wanted to make sure my mic was all working when you're talking. But yes, I'm going to hold up a newspaper with today's date on it now. I gotta get one in here.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a current newspaper? Just
I don't have access.
Where do we wire the money? Yeah,
suspicious.
We will get you out of there. Don't you worry. Yeah. So, I mean, to catch everybody up here, let's get everybody up to speed. If they haven't listened to the latest Point Shot episode, of course, we recommend you to go do so. We had Dwayne Steinel on from Two Goalies, One Mic to kind of bring the Buffalo Sabres perspective to the discussions. But it mostly centered around Sam Reinhart, who, of course, has been in amongst the discussions here in Vancouver all week as a potential trade target for Jim Benning. So with the Canucks looking like they want to be aggressive, I think all of us can unanimously agree that we would rather Jim Benning not go all in this year and just kind of take his medicine. But for the sake of debate, if Jim Benning is going to be aggressive and going to make those moves and say Sam Reinhart is the target, is he better off on Bo Horvat's wing, or is he better centering his own line? And I think that is ultimately where the debate kicks in.
Sure it is. And I think my perspective is, hey, if you could theoretically have enough depth on your team and enough cap allocation to put 6.5, whatever we decided that, Sam's going to make on a, what we think could be somewhat team friendly of a contract, which we're speculating about. We don't know that. So again, could be higher. So, hey, if we could do that, awesome. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not saying like that doesn't sound great. I'm just saying I don't see how, given our cap constraints, we could possibly allocate that kind of contract to a guy who we also would be, as I said, pitching to him to come home and take a hometown discount. And again, I love Dwayne's sales pitch that he thinks that we can get a 65-point third line shutdown center who also apparently doesn't even have all these great wingers, but he can carry this line. Like, wow, like shit, like that sounds absolutely fantastic. Sign me up. I just don't believe it.
I got to just say, like, in terms of Sean's business, in terms of Malcolm's point of paying a third line center, whatever, X amount of dollars, I mean, personally, I don't really look at it that way because I pay good money for good players, right? Like, I don't care if you're playing on my third line or my second line. Like, if they didn't care, then, the Tampa Bay Lightning wouldn't pay Mikhail Sergachev because he plays on their third defensive pair, but I'm sure they're happy to have him on their team because he's a big contributing member of their team. So, if Sam Reinhart can do the job and he's a good player, and I think we all agree he's a good player, I'd be happy to pay him to put on the third line. I wouldn't say, I don't want to pay a third line center, whatever, $6 million, 6.5, whatever contract he is. So in terms of that way, I think I don't really see a problem in paying, big money for someone in your bottom six as long as they're, worth it or good at least.
I'd like to chime in here on that, just to quickly piggyback off that point and let Malcolm rebuttal here. I just want to say that, like, why are we, you don't have to label everything like third line, bottom six. Like Sam Reinhart, you could bring him in, play him on whatever line you want to, call Horvat the third line center if you want to. Just, the bottom line is we're trying to make 3 scoring lines, and if Reinhart can help you do that at whatever cap he is, then go for it. And it's not like you're going to bring him in and play him like 12 minutes a night like you would a Brandon Sutter or a Jay Beagle if he's the third line center. You're playing the guy 18 minutes a night, 19 minutes a night. Like, you're going to find a way to get him his ice time that he needs, right? So it's not about necessarily thinking like, oh, yeah, this is the solution here. And the counterpoint is, who are you bringing in to be third line center if it's not like – if Sam Reinhart's not third line center, it's going to be JT Miller. And JT Miller makes, 5, whatever. So what's the difference between playing my third line center 5 and change and, $6 million? If it's an upgrade, like I'm bringing in a guy like Reinhart. So that's kind of where I stand on it from. So, yeah.
I think you all are forgetting about that thing called the salary cap. and how much allocation we already have to bad contracts that are not going to be contributing pieces on this team. So, when I hear what you're saying, it makes total sense in a vacuum when you completely throw out the fact that we are in cap hell with terrible cap allocation and don't have these hypothetical players that you're talking about that are suddenly going to be able to be plugged in on these guys' wings that are going to be able to produce. I said to Sean on the podcast, you want 3 scoring lines. We don't have 2 scoring lines right now. Like we need to work on the second line first, and before 3 scoring lines sounds fantastic, but we're not even there yet.
I don't think we're that far though. Like, to be honest, like if I'm being completely honest, the Canucks had such a bad year this year, but it wasn't indicative of the lack of talent on the top end of our lineup, right? It was the lack of depth. When we ran into injuries, when we ran into other things that we just couldn't keep afloat because there was just no support for those star players. And when they slumped, there was nobody else to lean on, right? Like, you can't be leaning on Brandon Sutter to score hat tricks, right? Like, that should be gravy rather than like a necessity. And to me, like, I look at the third line spot, which has been held by Brandon Sutter. He's getting paid $4.375 for a player that's ultimately brought nothing. I'd be more than happy to pay somebody $1.5 million, $2 million more to bring significantly higher value to that role and rejuvenate a line, a potential to go to top 9 players. And we got to remember too, we're bringing Podkolzin in. I think that we're kind of one wing away from having a top 9, like a legit top 9 that would be actually pretty formidable. And like the thing that I like about Sam Reinhart in particular is the defensive aspect of the game. This is something that Dwayne was touching on as well in his move to becoming a center again, is that he's been able to be so reliable as kind of a shutdown guy. I'm wary to put labels and definitions to players, because I find like more often than not they're very multidimensional, and Sam Reinhart's one of those guys that can chip in very well offensively. You could either go superbly well on the wing where he has somebody kind of to ride shotgun with, or he can run his own line, be kind of a more offensive, less defensive Danault, if that makes sense. But I wouldn't be thinking like in terms of line 1, line 2, line 3. It'd be more Pettersson, Horvat, and in this case, Reinhart's line. And you kind of run them all out in different matchups and different scenarios, but you're able to spread out that ice time without having to lean so heavily upon, right now, Bo Horvat, and kind of putting him into right now it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. Bo Horvat is not a defensive centerman. He's got the body that looks like one, but he's not one. And in my mind, we got to stop thinking of him like that and free him up out of that role. Sam Reinhart is somebody that can actually play that type of role, and would be able to release Horvat of those chains.
I think we already have that player though in Elias Pettersson. At the end of the playoffs and at the beginning of the season, he was starting to see that first line versus top line matchup. Beat best on best. And of course the comparisons. Hopefully Cam's listening to Pavel Datsyuk. I think are pretty good ones. And we all know that Datsyuk wasn't necessarily, he wasn't a 100-point player, but he contributed, at 100 points, certainly a season, in how, impressive defensively he was. And I think, again, that's to me what I would be looking to do is start using Petey as that, shutdown center, 65, 70 point. Hopefully he can become a, point per game kind of guy in a top line. I just, again, as I said, these things, this all sounds great. But also, right now we have 4 defensemen signed to a contract, and I think that's assuming Quinn Hughes, and right now I've got him at $6 million times 4. Yeah. So again, if we're allocating that much more cap space to the forwards, what are we doing with our defense? Again, Hamonic apparently wants about 3. I don't know if he'll get that, but let's call that maybe 2.5, because I think we need having a consistent, capable partner for Quinn Hughes is an important thing for us. I really don't think we want to be, trying year over year to bring in a new guy and hope it works out with Quinn. I think that, he's far too valuable, for that. So again, let's call that 2.5 times 2. So I just don't see where the cap space is coming from. And I even ran one of your little cap friendlies, Sean, just to be like, am I out to lunch here? Am I missing something? And in my trade, I did 9 and Roussel for Reinhart, and then signed him 6.25. But again, and we don't have the cap space to do all this. And that's, again, of course, without signing any other forwards or a 6th defenseman.
But
what is your PD? What is your PD contract? Because
7 times 3.
Yeah, I've been doing
same as Barzal. Yeah. This is a separate issue, though. This is not about can we afford Reinhart. This is if we got Reinhart in this hypothetical world, where would he fit, right? Because I'm not sure I'm sold on let's get Reinhart. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying let's go get Reinhart because we can afford it. But I was saying if he was here, you're gonna pay him regardless. I don't really see a difference in paying him to be on the line with Horvat or paying him to be on his own line. Like that's what my sort of point is on that. And in terms of having Pettersson sort of be your matchup center, yeah, that sounds good. But like we sort of not too many teams in the NHL go with their number 1 line center being their best defensive penalty killer for the whole, or penalty kill matchup guy for the whole season. It's just too much of a load on terms of ice time over the course of an 82 game season. And yeah, maybe in a short stint in the playoffs, he can do it. And I definitely think he's a capable player of doing it, but I don't think over an 82 game season, it's the best bet to have, your, let's say the Lotto line be your shutdown line, because they're also going to be your best offensive line. They're going to be power play time. I'm not cool with Pettersson playing 28 minutes a night, right? I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if that's the best formula for success.
That's my thought as well, is that you don't want to run him into the ground. Like, you don't want to end up having an often injured Pettersson just because you're running him into the ground, because he's your power play specialist. He's your penalty killer. He's your matchup guy. He's everything, right?
I think Pettersson, as like Ace said, I think in the playoffs, you want to ride your big guys, like go for it. Pettersson can be in the first unit penalty kill and the power play, like go for it. I don't care. 82 games of regular season, probably not worth it. And I mean, I think like we kind of saw when Pettersson gets too much ice time, when he gets past that, 22, 23, 24 minutes a night, he does play a little bit worse. Like his, kind of sweet spot's probably like 19 minutes for Pettersson. 20 minutes is probably where you want him to be around. So, I mean, you can't have – he's obviously going to be in the first power play unit. And so if you're making him kill penalties on top of that, that's already getting –
Well, sorry, I wasn't pitching him killing penalties. Of course, that's –
This was a shutdown.
Far too much. It's the shutdown 5-on-5 is what I'm talking about. You still have, whoever is your fourth line center.
I could honestly live with that. I could honestly live with, like – well, I mean, why not? I mean, it's better than Horvat doing it and getting caved in. And Horvat has proven to be a very capable offensive player. So – I mean, I think Pettersson's a guy who's like good enough that he could probably, the best defense is a good offense kind of philosophy, just line up him against the team's first line. And, maybe hopefully he'll also possess the puck, 50% of the time. And then, just take your chances there and then let Horvat get an easier matchup and actually try to drive some play for once.
Well, and I grabbed some player cards. These are all courtesy of JFresh. So I'm like, shout out to JFresh. If you're not a Patreon subscriber for him, I highly recommend it, because it's just incredible resource. But so like I'll pull up some, like here's Pettersson, and we could just see good. Like this is phenomenal, right? Like Pettersson is unbelievable.
It's all blue, so that looks good to me.
All blue, but like look at where his defensive numbers are, right? Like even in a down season last year where he struggled, his numbers are just glistening, right? Like his finishing numbers are low, and that just kind of reflects just how difficult his season was. But everything else is just unbelievable. Like he's very high up in everything. To be in the 96th percentile is phenomenal as a young 22-year-old center. Like I don't think there's many pieces in the league like Elias Pettersson.
Well, and that was what I was going to say too. Is when most teams don't do this. Well, most teams don't have Elias Pettersson.
Right, exactly. So I think we're in kind of a unique situation where like Pettersson is somebody that, to Malcolm's point, can be a shutdown guy. Like look at where his defensive numbers are, right? And then here, let's flip over to Phil Horvat. Yeah, I do. Yeah, but
okay,
we have everyone, baby.
I got them all, man. So we've got Bo Horvat here, right? Like, look at his defensive numbers. And this is the guy that people keep saying is their shutdown guy. Like, talk about miscast. Like, his numbers are near the bottom, right, for defense.
But I also think this reflects a little bit, too, the quality of players he's playing with, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at
his quality of competition,
but his quality of teammate is in the 85th percentile. It's not like he's playing with really terrible players, which I think is sort of what people say.
But he's facing the best competition.
I mean, I don't think anyone's surprised by that. He's been completely.
He's not good. He's not a good defensive player. I think he's just not a good defensive player. He's just not a good defensive player. It seems like.
And I'd love to see the chains taken off.
Way around it, really, like Bo. Sorry, Sean. What is that?
Like, I'd love to see the chains taken off him for this reason, right? Like, like he's somebody that. We got to stop thinking of him as a shutdown center and more as a power forward, right? Like he is a speedy power forward. He likes to go to the net. He's got a good shot. He's got good hands, but he likes to drive play. And he's not like he's a good face-off person. And I think that's where people get so hung up on face-offs that they miss the rest of the defensive responsibilities, right? Like if we go back to Pettersson briefly here, Like his quality of competition slightly lower, but his quality of teammates 10% better. Like he's definitely much more suited to be a shutdown guy. But if you had, I feel like it's putting all your eggs in one basket with Pettersson.
So could I jump in here with a little bit on Reinhardt, just because I did some analytical deep dive as well on the center versus winger, where do you put him type situation. So looking at Simon Reinhardt's his most played line as a leading center was with Skinner and Olofsson, and his most played line as a winger was with Eichel and Hall. With Skinner and Olofsson, he played 150 minutes, and they had a 2.72 expected goals against, while when he was a winger with Eichel and Hall at 91 minutes, he had a 1.31 goals against. Their expected goal percentage as a winger at 69.7, and leading a line it's 42.9. So I also he tracks as a center based off of the way that he plays. Like there's no question about that, but it seems like he can't play the center position even though he's supposed to be able to play the center position. He's kind of a lot like Jonathan Drouin in that case. Like Jonathan Drouin is built to play center. Like but just for whatever reason, with Drouin, I know his defense is a problem, but he just can't play center right now. He has to be moved to the wing. And I think that it also depends on what type of teammates you give him. If you give him decent teammates that can play defense, like if you put maybe like a Tanner Pearson with Reinhardt on that third line as a center, or a Podkolzin, maybe it works. But if you need him to control a line by himself with average teammates on the wing, it's just not going to work. He needs to have that secondary option, like an Eichel, like a Taylor Hall, to really be able to control a line at center. Like he needs to have that secondary option.
So I do have a retort for that, because I like what you said. Like I think you've nailed it but the thing that I'll bring attention to is his quality of teammates. Skinner is somebody who barely got into the lineup in Buffalo, and Olofsson is a power play specialist, and that's pretty much it, right? So for expecting them to shut down anything defensively, looking at his defensive numbers last year where he played primarily center and played with a guy who's basically a power play trigger man and somebody who's a healthy scratch, I'm wowed by that. To be
okay, so then we can go with more offensive. When he played on the wing with Taylor Hall on one end and Eric Stahl down the middle, they played 63 minutes together, 1.7 expected goals for, and a 65.4 expected goals percentage. So it really depends on who he has. He's better as a winger. That's what the statistics are kind of telling us. But it all depends on who he has down the middle versus if he's down the middle, who he has on the wings. Right now, he's tracking better as a winger, and especially with the Vancouver, the way that they have wingers, like unless you're putting JT Miller with him or a guy like Brock Besser with him, it's not going to really work down the middle. It seems like, just based off of that, he needs that secondary option on the wing to actually be an effective center.
I gotta say, this season in Buffalo, he had Eichel as his first line center, who was then injured for most of the season. So pretty much whatever line he's on is their first line. So he's pretty much drawing all the matchups in Buffalo while he's there, no matter what line he's playing on or who his wingers are. Whereas in Vancouver, if you acquired him and played him on a separate line, he would have Horvat and Pettersson in front of him, which would, in some respects, shelter him. And even if it's not sheltering him, it's going to open up opportunities for Horvat or Pettersson, right? Because you can't, full-on matchup every single line. If you one of those lines is going to have a softer matchup, right? And I'm assuming it'll be the Reinhardt line if you're playing him on a separate line from Pettersson and Horvat. So in that sense, I think, I agree he needs help on the wings. I don't think anyone here suggests you put him with, Tyler Graveck and Tyler Mott, and you're going to expect him to,
I'm not suggesting that. Don't even give me that look.
But if I'm not, I don't think anyone's suggesting here that if he plays with like those sorts of players that he's going to be, really, really awesome or something.
Yeah.
But that's part of the equation as well. Like, you need to look at who Vancouver has down the middle and who they have down the wings. Like, we
I
can
mean, I
say,
think it's
oh,
pretty
he
reasonable
needs-
for say Podkolzin to play with him next season. Is that?
yeah, but we
is
don't
that
know what Podkolzin is actually going to be when he gets here. So
I'm
what
gonna
we
go
have
out
to
on a limb and say
do,
he's better than Tyler Graovac.
Yeah.
well, yeah, but
He's going to be
but like
honestly,
Yeah.
he's going to be better than Hoglander, and Hoglander was very good this season. Like
See, I don't
Podkolzin
know.
is a
Like,
man.
I know. I'm like, you don't know what Podkolzin is. Like, you can't
Yeah.
be like, Podkolzin's definitely going to be
So
better
we
than
have
Hoglander.
to-
Hoglander
we have to take
defied
every,
all expectations last year.
Yeah.
Like, did anybody expect Hoglander scored what, around a half point per game this season, right? Like, did anybody expect that out of Hoglander? And I mean, are you seriously in an 82 game season are you expecting Podkolzin to come in here on a third line and score 41 points? Like, probably not. Like, that's
Not on
a
a
little
third
bit
line, but
unrealistic.
But think about the opportunity that Hoglander had. He was playing
See-
second line minutes, right?
On a matchup
What-
line with Horvat, right? So you're going to put Podkolzin in the same situation if you throw him on the Reinhardt line, aren't you?
I would
guess.
honestly love
I
to
would suppose then
see.
yes. My answer would be
I'd-
yes.
I'd honestly love to see a line of like Bo Horvat with Sam Reinhart and Brock Besser, because I think that line just works. You have Reinhart, he is more of a setup man. He's good at finishing, but he's more of a setup man. You have Besser, who's the trigger man, and then you have Horvat, who can just run the middle. That way, they're good defensively. They have that, but like if you put him down the middle, you have no wingers unless you're pulling a
And you
JT
don't
Miller
put him
or
on the
Brock
wing.
Besser
If you
off
don't
of
put him at
those
center,
top
you have no
lines.
centers. Who's third next year if you don't put Reinhardt there? Are we bringing back Sutter 1 year, 1 million, playing him again?
Like-
Like, I don't think.
No, but we absolutely do need to address and bring someone in who is not currently on our team to play third line center next year. Like, no one's saying that.
You could,
I
yeah,
suggested
but I think you
Nolan
could say
Patrick
that with
on
like
the
a bunch of
podcast.
positions. You could probably say about a bunch of positions in the Canucks, couldn't you? Like, the Canucks need another top six winger. They need a third line center. They probably need a top four right-handed D-man. Like, and these are all things that are probably not probably. They definitely aren't in the organization currently. So it's really thinking about if you bring in Reinhardt. Reinhardt is a solution in one of those two holes. Whether like
Sure,
we
but
all
you've now
agree
just
he
spent all
fills
your
one of
cap
those-
space doing that.
But Malcolm,
Okay,
is anyone
again,
expecting all of those solutions to get all of those holes to get fixed in one offseason? Like, is that
Well,
a
I do
realistic
think-
expectation?
I do think it's going to be a lot easier to fill within a winger than it will be a it will be
Agreed.
easier to
Yes.
fill this offseason
Yes.
with a third line center than to go find that third line winger.
See, I don't
Because
I don't
there are those
necessarily agree.
cheap there are those
I think-
cheap
I think you went
centers
top
that
six
will
winger
be
there.
available.
Did you mean
I think
top six
wingers are
winger
super
there?
easy to get. Like,
You meant
okay,
third line
here's some
center,
other
top six
options.
winger, right? Just checking. Because you said
Yeah, it will be
you-
easier to get that third line center than to find a top six winger with the cap space that they have through free agency.
But we essentially already have a top six, right? Like we already have a top six.
I mean, I'm looking for more for like a middle six sort of winger, and I think you would
Yeah.
probably apply those guys more on the cheap, especially given like an expansion draft situation coming up. Like there would probably be teams that will be looking to move sort of middle six forwards on the low price point.
Sean,
that you would bring in.
lay out your top nine here, because
Yeah,
like
'cause I feel like there's a lot of scattering right
yeah,
now.
exactly. Like every the good wingers are on every single time on the line every single time we bring up one of the different centers.
Yeah, see, like the issue to me about having like a Reinhardt, Horvat, Besser line is
What's going
that you
on?
have a center and a right wing, and then you have Sam that's a center and a right wing. So you have
Yeah.
no left wing, right? So
To me, it's a nice power play.
it would be a really nice power plays. Like that could be a PP2 maybe, right? But my lines would be the Lotto line. So that's Miller, Pedersen, Besser. Second line would be Pearson, Horvat, Hoglander, because they worked really well together. Then you would have a third line of Reinhardt, Podkolzin. And if you had the ability to go and get somebody like a Mason Appleton, or if not, like a Tyler Mott as a third
Well,
line.
yes,
but this
like,
is what-
definitely,
I
wanna say
like,
Nathan
you
Shaw.
definitely now
You
don't
had-
have cap space for another guy.
You don't
But
have
Mason
cap space to
Appleton's
bring in
making
Mason
less than a
Appleton.
mil.
Like,
He'll make more.
if you bring in Reinhardt now,
Not for
though, you're
this
pretty
season.
much using all your cap space to bring Reinhardt and re-signing Edler and Hamonic, right? Like you pretty much bring
Well,
back the
and
exact
that's
same
the other
defense.
thing
So
too is
you bring
like we
back
haven't at
Hamonic
all
on a
addressed the defense.
cheap deals, and then you bring in. Maybe you could squeeze a guy like Appleton in there, sure. But my point is, like, I don't even if you want to bring in Sam Reinhart this year, sure, do that. But I don't think the Canucks are winning the Stanley Cup next year. Sam Reinhart is 25. Like you're bringing him in because you have an opportunity to bring in a good player to your organization. So do that. Maybe you don't have the exactly perfect third line to go on. Put him there for now. a lot of dead money comes off the in a year. Then you can address some bigger areas of need going forward. Like I'm thinking in the future. I'm not thinking right this minute. Bring in Reinhardt and the team is a cup contender.
Not
bring in
instant
Reinhardt,
contender.
the team is significant. Yeah. We're significantly better now, though.
I agree.
No doubt.
And okay, this was my suggestion because I know Hamonic's been brought up a couple times, and I don't want to get into the defense too much, but I don't re-sign him. That's kind of where my cap friendly comes in. Is like I don't re-sign him to 2.5. I go for like Hakanpää for like 900,000, right? And you end up saving a bunch of money. You re-sign Edler. So then you end up having like Schmidt be the partner for Hughes. Then you've got Myers, and then you've got Hakanpää on the right side. Is it strong? No, not necessarily, but it's a step in the right direction. The next season, when you have money, then you target the defense. But until then, you've got a much stronger forward group that can help you with the defensive responsibilities a bit more, and you've got, I would say, elite goaltending in Demko, and I would assume Holtby in this situation still.
Here's one additional wrinkle into all of this is, yes, we are in the flat cap, but Detroit and Seattle are coming into this offseason. Well, Seattle will have probably $30 million, $20 million in cap space. Detroit has close to $30 million. So if you go, we'll just sign Hakanpää for $900,000. Well, maybe Detroit wants him and they'll say, we'll give you 1.1. And so because the Canucks are so screwed financially and against the cap, they can't just bring in these guys at low contracts, but because they're going to get offers in other places. And because other teams have all of this cap space, they're going to be able to offer a guy who's 900,000, 1.2 million instead. And that might sway the person to go over to the other team.
I do think that not everything's going to be like, I don't see Steve Yzerman or Ron Francis being willing to outbid grotesquely for depth pieces, right? Like I can see them going out and like spending a little bit more for Dougie Hamilton, or going out and like making a bigger splash. Maybe it does happen where it's like a couple 100,000 and it's enough to kind of put you out of the running.
But the thing is, those are replacement level players. It's not like I need Hakanpää. I can find somebody else to do that job. I don't need that specific player, right? Like the point is, I can sign a bit piece defenseman for 900,000.
This is where.
All right, guys. Unfortunately, I got to run, but enjoy the debate.
Yeah. Let's see you later, Malcolm.
Thanks, Malcolm.
I mean, I think this is where pro scouting comes in, right? Like you look at Florida, Verhaeghe. Like who heard of Verhaeghe before this season? And now everyone's like trying to find the next Verhaeghe, and they're like, "Oh, well, those guys aren't available." Well, if everybody knew those guys were available and going to be helpful, they wouldn't come in on the fucking league minimum. Right? They're going to come in on a lot of expensive contracts. So it's like, I don't know who the next Carter Verhaeghe is. That's the point of doing this, right? So
you
can't just
exactly. And do I think Hakanpää is like the next answer? No, right? Like he's a depth piece. He's a number 6 D-man, right? Like,
but there's also one huge X factor that we need to remember in all of this is that Jim Benning just is awful at signing in the offseason.
See, that's the factor I don't want to take into consideration.
Because... So, like, we need to, it's something that we really seriously need to look into is that the fact that Jim Benning is might give Hakanpää $2 million contract somehow. Like, like it might not be that much.
Being feasible, right? Like I don't.
Yeah,
but like
he might look at it and do that stuff anymore, though, right? Like
but he'll find a way.
He's painted himself into the corner. He painted himself into the corner now, right? Like I don't think.
Yeah.
Like even if I think he could. I don't think ownership would let him at this point. I mean, that's
the salary cap won't let him, right?
It's really funny
financially can't do it. You can't.
It's really funny because looking into the Seattle expansion draft and everything, I was looking at the Oliver Ekman-Larsson argument, and one thing that really interests me about that is if we go back to next season, remember Pettersson can be offer sheeted. So does Jim try to go back down that alley of Oliver Ekman-Larsson because he wanted to last year, and
there's no money for it. There's no money for it.
Failed. Yeah,
but they're going to try these things. They're going to try to do it because
they want to take.
I think Jim Benning.
Well, that's that's the concern. Like, what is
I don't think
willing...
he's a big enough idiot to think that he's going to prioritize Ekman-Larsson over Hughes or Pettersson.
I think he learned his lesson this time. I hope.
What is he willing to give up to get that piece that he really wants? Like, if Arizona comes up to you and says, we want Miller and we'll give you Oliver Ekman-Larsson,
And I
Well,
laugh.
I would be like, you need to take Louis Eriksson and Tyler Myers probably. And then
but we're not thinking
And
like
even then,
see,
yeah.
we're not thinking like Jim Benning, which is the problem here. Like Jim Benning,
I'm not thinking like Jim Benning,
in
but
his
where is the
past-
money coming for Ekman-Larsson's contract? Even trading JT Miller out is not going to get you enough cap space to get Ekman-Larsson with enough money left over to get Hughes or Pedersen.
Even if the value is
Haven't-
there, which it's not.
Like Jim,
It's not,
Jim
yeah, I mean,
is
that's-
really stupid. But not dumb enough to not re-sign the two best players in his team, right? Like he
Yeah.
drafted and did great Quinn Hughes and Pedersen. He knows of the future. He wanted probably to get Ekman-Larsson in last year. He wanted to up the defense after he lost Tanev and Stetcher and wanted to make damn playoffs this year. And was probably realizing his job's on the line. And he's like, I need to bring in guys to help Pedersen and Hughes while they're still cheap. And I don't think he was thinking, oh, Ekman-Larsson's got 7 years on an $8 million contract. He's like, oh, well, he's good right now, so he can help me win. But like at this point, he's like, Pedersen and Hughes are without contract. So that is the number one priority. And I would be surprised if the Canucks make moves on any front, acquisition wise or signing wise, that's not Pedersen or Hughes first.
Yeah, got to remember that was before Schmidt and Hamonic were both
Yeah.
here, right? So that's essentially very close to $8
That's
million
that's the that's
spent
yeah, right.
right there, right? That's the
Schmidt is-
OEL money.
Schmidt's
which is gone.
5.95, and then Hamonic was what, like basically 1.1,
Was like
right? So that's
one-
pretty much almost
yeah. Yeah, so it's it's a little less than OEL,
just off
but
the top of my
it's-
head, I can't remember.
so I just wanted to
I got
kind
it
of
right here.
rapid fire
Hamonic was 1.25.
through some other options available for the 3C position. I just grabbed kind of a handful here. Like obviously JT Miller right now is
No.
looking like he's going to be the 3C, which I'm not a fan
don't do
of.
it.
Like
Me
look
either.
at his defensive numbers, right? Like I just
He's not
I
a
don't
center.
view-
He's not a center.
He's not a
just
center.
lefter who's good at faceoffs.
Yeah, exactly. I don't view him as a like I know he did fine,
He's a-
but he's did
Miller's
fine.
Miller's a
That's it.
center in a pinch. You know, you Horvat or Pedersen
Yeah.
go down for a week and you plug him in there because you want to keep some offensive players around him. He's a guy you put in at center in a pinch. He is not a bona fide center in the NHL, night in, night out, 82 games a year.
Agreed. Well, and look at his number. Like I look at his numbers last year, where he had like a career season, right? And even then, his defensive numbers are not strong, right? Like,
Yep.
I would not be relying upon him to be the shutdown guy. at all.
JT
It's like-
Miller's like greatest strength
No.
is his forechecking ability on the wing,
Exactly.
and you completely take it away playing him at center, and he's just not the same level of forechecker at center as he is on the wing. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's a non-starter for me.
And you rob Pedersen of a very strong,
His best line mate probably.
Best
yeah.
line mate. Probably his line mate, yeah.
one of his best.
There was instant chemistry
mates.
with them too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's another one. Obviously, somebody who will be out of the price range for the Canucks, as he's 2 games away from the Stanley Cup final with the Habs right now, but he's a free agent. I wanted
needs
to
to fill
pull
the
him. Yeah, like I wanted to pull him up because I wanted to kind of compare and contrast his defensive numbers with Reinhart. Obviously, his defensive numbers are vastly superior,
Superior,
right?
yeah.
Like you look at his quality of teammates being down at like 58% and his quality of competition at 98. So he's like matched up against the team's best and he's shutting them down very effectively. But he brings like almost no offense at all. Like
Well,
look-
I mean, the thing is, he play drives at a decent level. He doesn't score,
yes,
but at least he's gonna generate some chances for you, if nothing else.
agreed. Yeah, like and like look at Reinhardt.
Anyway,
You're not honestly giving up a lot of defense, right? Like you're giving up a bit, but like it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. To be,
And I mean,
honest.
you're getting a vastly superior offensive player in Reinhardt than Deneau, like not even close.
and
right?
younger, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
3 years, but still younger, right?
I mean, on your podcast, you guys had Dwayne Bond there. He pretty much said that he watches the Sabres. I mean, that's tuned into a lot of Sabres games this year, and he said that he thought Reinhardt was better at center, and he also thought that he said he would bet on Reinhardt taking a hometown discount to play for the Canucks. So whatever that discount is, like I mean, Canucks are actually
You just
actually-
hope that, yeah, the
Reinhardt is-
Vancouver connection, right?
We need Reinhardt at 6x. Would you sign Reinhardt for a 6x6?
Yes. I would.
It's like I would too.
25-year-old, I'd put him to age 31. That's still
That gets you
pretty
41,
reasonable.
60.
You're pretty much still getting all of his prime years, basically. And there's no point in that contract where I would say he's probably not being worth the value, because even at age 30, 31, he's probably decent enough that he may be a little bit overpaid, but he's not going to be overpaid by like 4 or 5 million. He might be overpaid by like a mil or a mil and a half.
I mean, year of his contract, you're hoping the salary cap's started to go up a little bit again, so it might even look better by then. I
Biggest
think
thing that you're always looking at with a contract is surplus value, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's how much I'm investing in, how much am I going to get out of it? And so with the longer term contracts, you're always betting that you're going to, over the life of the contract, get surplus value somewhere. Going by 6 by 6,
I would surplus every year. I'm assuming you will get a pretty large
almost every year, if not every
year. At the beginning of that contract. For the first 3 years of that contract, pretty much every year is under 30, you'll probably be extracting surplus value. And then even his age 30 seasons, if he's slightly below performing, over the life of that contract, you probably extracted more than it was worth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you get up to his age 30 year, all surplus value, you have 1 year on a 6-year deal where you might not get surplus value. You might get actual market value. But again, if the cap starts going up again in that time, then you are still getting value because you've invested long term on that, right?
Yep.
Here's a couple other names. These are lesser names, of course. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, you might. I'll come back to it at the end.
Okay. So here's the name that Malcolm brought up, was Nolan Patrick, and I do like him as like a very low project player, right? Like I would not bring him in to be like the third line center, but I would bring him in as like a bottom 6 right wing option that you could potentially groom into being Beagle after Beagle's done, right? Like he's not.
I think Patrick, but I don't think there's a long solution unless he pans out all of a sudden. I mean, this is like this is big time project territory. This is grabbing
huge.
This is Sven Berchi-esque.
Well, and he's got good skill, right? But the problem is his health is a major question mark. He's 22 years old. He's already lost over a full season due to injury. And it's not like with Pettersson, it's different, right? Like as it was a wrist, it was a hip, like it was different things. Even with Besser, it was different. But
the other thing is with Patrick, and the pattern with Patrick, because even when he was healthy, it's not like he was having world-beating numbers that you could point to and be like, look, there's a lot here, right? Like he's had pretty mediocre results in his limited games. And yes, I know he's played a very limited amount of time and he's been injured a lot, but it's not like when he's been there and it's been pretty pedestrian. Yeah, there hasn't been anything to write home about.
Like again, like I know we brought these numbers up a lot, but quality of teammates to quality of competition, right? Like he should be just dominating his competition with those, and he's not, to be honest. And I think there's a lot of potential there. He's obviously only 22 years old. He had the skill set to go second overall. And for a long time was projected to be first overall, but he is a project, and that you have to just kind of brace for that being the reality if you were to go get him.
Look at Nolan Patrick, man. He played 73 games in his rookie season, scored 30 points. 72 games in his next season, 31 points again. Then he missed an entire NHL season, played 0 games. Then he scored 9 points in 52 games this season. Like, this guy, is a old lad, was a second overall pick a little while ago, but like, he's shown no, upwards trajectory at all, really, and he's already got injury problems. You can go back to his draft, season where he was the captain of the Wheat Kings. Draft -1, he had 102 points in 72 games. Then his draft season, he only played 33 games. So I mean, it's not, this is like even if you get him in and he's healthy, like this is not really, moving the needle that much. And you look at those advanced analytics; those weren't great,
Yeah.
So Patrick. There's a big problem with Patrick in that we don't know what, like he has major injury problems even going back to junior. That was always the question coming into the draft. Like a lot of people said he was going to go first overall, but I think it was New Jersey that kind of took him or went with Hischier instead because of the injury concerns. he missed an entire year. He was injured this year again for a little bit. Like, there's just too many question marks with Patrick that to bring him in. This could be like another David Clarkson type situation with Toronto, where you bring in a guy, you sign him to a bigger contract because he's shown that upside, and then injuries just take him out. So there is tremendous risk with Nolan Patrick for sure. And I know if I'm Vancouver, based off of the fact that they've just dealt with injuries nonstop the last couple of years, that's not a pond that you want to be diving into again.
Yeah, unless you're getting him for like bargain bin prices, right? Like if you're getting him for like Jake Virtanen or like a 4th or 5th round pick, like I would not really be. But why would Philadelphia do that? Like they would never do that. So
Philadelphia also like they have now. Philadelphia, the question is what they're going to do with their expansion draft, because they don't meet the qualifications. Right, they have a problem with how many players they have signed and how many players are going to be exposed. So they're going to be looking to offload some contracts to protect other players.
So maybe you can get him on the cheap.
But it also depends. He's an RFA. So what are you going to sign him to? Are you going to sign him to a $3-4 million contract, or are you going to be able to get him at, to
me, he
1
hasn't
million
even earned
or
a pay bump. Like I would sign him for exactly what he's at. Like
but there's also the thought that he was a second overall pick for a reason. He's had a good season in the past. Like, so GMs might.
His arbitration case is garbage. If you get him and he's the RFA on your team, no one's offer sheeting Nolan Patrick. If he's offer sheeting for $3 or $4 million, just take the draft picks to that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't be worried about it at all. I'd say see at arbitration, and you can go and collect your $900,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would just qualify him. I wouldn't even sign him to a contract. Just qualify. He'll sign the qualifying offer and see what. There's no risk attached to that then, because if he has another shitty season or he can't play, then it's like whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's no reason to commit long term. For it either.
If you're Vancouver, if Vigneault is to the Flyers, he hates Nolan Patrick. Vigneault loves veterans and he wants a gritty bottom 6. You sell Vigneault Jay Beagle at 50% retained, $1.5 million Jay Beagle is the kind of guy Vigneault wants for the team. You take Patrick back the other way. Maybe they draft it because Beagle's. Yeah, you bring in Patrick. Like, I mean, I would just take the save. You probably whatever you can bring Patrick and back, like maybe the league minimum, league minimum $900K, something like that. You can maybe re-sign Sutter for 1 by 1, and then just go with that. I mean, at least you dump Beagle for a year. Grab Patrick, and if Patrick turns into 8 and only 22, and if he's a long-term fit in the bottom 6, seems like a worth it gamble to me. And the way that you structure that, like I could eat salary for 1 year because Beagle's only, got a year left in his deal anyway.
Yeah, I like that move. See, the biggest thing is like I would not be looking at him for a third line anything, let alone 3C.
Right? This guy's a long term bet, like long shot 4th liner or something, maybe.
Yeah,
I just started him on and the 4th line.
Right wing makes sense.
Started there.
Yeah, bring back Sutter for like a 4C or even a Grayovac real cheap as a 4C and put him on the right wing. I'm assuming Virtanen will not be a Canuck, whether that's buyout or termination. So that's a spot open. So there are 3 other ones that I'm just going to quickly pan through for other options before we wrap here. But like I've had Eric Holla on my watch list for a while as a 3C. I don't view him as a second liner at all. He's older, but seeing this card has kind of scared me off a bit here because this is pretty brutal. To me, he would be just kind of a cheap option, potentially in free agency.
Really depends.
Yeah, like he'd be kind of like a crutch if you decided to not really address your 3C position this year and instead work on defense, to bring him in on like a 1 year to get through this year until you can have some cap again. Martinook. I really like Jordan Martinook. I just don't think. I know this is going to drive you crazy, Adam, but I get Beagle vibes from investing into Martinook. I think that he's going to get paid well. I think he's going to get paid well above what he's worth.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be because he played on a very, very strong Carolina team and he was a key contributor. He could play all three forward positions, but he's not going to, I don't see him aging well. And I don't see him as somebody that particularly does anything spectacular aside from penalty killing. And I personally,
I don't think
former Vancouver Giants who went one pick after the Vancouver Canucks selected Alexander Mallet.
There you go. See, I would like to redo that pick, but that's about it. Because I don't view him as being surplus value for $2 million. That's
I don't see I don't see the Canucks wanting to invest heavily in penalty killers again.
No, we've already done that.
We've been down this road. We've been down this road.
Which actually brings us to our next one here.
Oh my god,
Luke Glendening.
So with Luke Glendening, he played for Detroit, so we need to put that into perspective as well.
At the very end of all this, I'm going to throw Sam Reinhart back up, and he's going to look like a darling. So, the biggest thing for Glendening is, of course, like Adam, you said, he's played for Detroit, so we have to keep that into consideration here. His quality of teammate is brutal, but he's a face-off guy, right? He's 31 years old already, and he's very good on the draw, like freaky good on the draw. But aside from that, point out where he's been exceptionally good. Like he's been decent defensively. He provides absolutely no offense. He has
will and determination because he stuck it out in Detroit for a long time.
Yeah, I'm done investing in Hart. I'm like hearing like he's good in the room or he's determined. It's like they're all professional athletes. They're all determined. And just because I said I would, here's Sam Reinhart. Yeah.
If you saw a guy to Jim Benning and he says you put him in the rejects pile right away.
Yeah, like I to me, there's really, if you're going to address the 3C spot effectively, like genuinely long term find a solution. Sam Reinhart is one of the best ones for it.
You improve the team long term. Sam Reinhart is, the avenue the Canucks should be exploring. But I just think the trade's not going to end up the Canucks today. Like, I was listening to the podcast, John, with Wayne, and I just think that I'm sure he's maybe being a bit of a homer in terms of holding out for on his players. But I think his trade expectations were really unreasonable for Eichel and for Reinhart. I just don't think he was being realistic in what you're going to get for guys like that. For me, if I'm Reinhart is the 9th overall straight up, and Buffalo eats salary on a Beagle or a Roussel or a Louis. In an ideal world, I'm dumping Louis in the 9th for Reinhart. And if that's not enough, okay, sorry, I'm just going to make my pick.
Yeah. Well, and Malcolm brought up a good point too, that he's an RFA for one more year. Right. So like you can qualify him for the 1 year, sign him for that. And then when we have money, go at him again. But he is an unrestricted free agent. You are going to have also JT Miller and Bo Horvat to deal with as well. Or no, sorry, you have Brock Besser to deal with. Not one more year for Miller and Horvat. So like it's not guaranteed. So like you wouldn't want to give up premium assets for 1 year of a guy, right? Unless you got him to sign a long-term like 6x6 right away, which you may not. He might want to see kind of how Vancouver goes, and I'm sure he's tired of losing, right? Like he's not going to want to come here and watch it be JT Miller.
Yep. But what if you guys are if you're the Canucks and you're getting Reinhart, for all you guys, what's the trade-off picking in Buffalo, and what's the maximum you're willing to lose in a Reinhart deal before you're too much?
Max, I go as 9th straight up. And that's like I'm really humming and hawing, right? Like that's like
I'm with Sean, honestly, like I'm trying to do the 9th and dumping a bad contract. Literally anything beyond that is not even. I'm sorry Buffalo, but
if a contract goes the other way, done. Like I'm sold. I'm in. Like if it's Roussel, if it's Beagle, it doesn't matter, right? Because now effectively you're only getting or using up cap space of $3 to $4 million, right? I'm cool with that to upgrade the 3C effectively. What I'm not cool with is adding $6.5 million and then being handcuffed for any other moves without I would really have to. I'd really be weighing that option. I would be open to 9th straight up. But I don't know. I would be, that's pretty much it. But I did kind of want to wrap. I know, Adam, you wanted to talk about UFO. Yeah. You guys had a good week.
Yeah, so we had a good week. I am going to, unfortunately, our boosted odd didn't land, but nobody first saw Portugal scoring 2 own goals in the game. But we did talk about how it was going to be a high-scoring game or a 0-0 game in there. So there's a couple of things that are coming out of tonight. First off, it's been announced that the GM of Vegas, Kelly McCrimmon, has tested positive for COVID. So that is going to be a situation to look out for, especially in the betting world. Like, are there players that are going to come down from this? In the it won't be right away. The time frame is the Stanley Cup final. So for this series, most players are going to be okay, but what happens in that Stanley Cup final? Also with Robin Lehner. So earlier today, before Lehner was announced, Canadians had a plus 155 on the money line. Now that Lehner has been announced, it's at plus 148. So you've actually reduced the odd. They've reduced the odds now that they know Lehner is in net. And that is very common. So one thing that you should do is if you hear of a goaltender, in the starter's net in the morning, but it hasn't been confirmed yet, put down the money on the team, especially if it's like a Montreal situation, because as soon as that gets confirmed that a backup is starting, usually the odds will go down. I also noticed that we got a comment about Vegas could be lying about benching Fleury. In the world, the NHL, they want to do a better job with the gambling side, and they want to make more money. So one thing that they're trying to work on is making sure that this type of thing doesn't happen where, you say Lehner's starting and then you start Fleury at the last second. Now, the playoffs are a different animal. They could play Fleury, but just based off of the body language of the players, what's been going on around the team, it looks like Lehner is starting. So keep an eye on that. In the Tampa Bay series with tomorrow, Islanders plus 147, Tampa Bay minus 182. So pay attention. One thing to pay attention with the Islanders series is Varlamov. We don't know if he's necessarily injured. He took a big hit a couple games ago, left the game for a little bit. He's been playing outstanding, but there could be a nagging injury there, potentially. Yeah. But even if they go with Sorokin, I don't know if the line moves that much. The Fleury versus Lehner is a little bit different scenario because Lehner played so bad in his first playoff game and he hasn't played in a very long time. Sorokin's really split the line. So pay attention to the injury reports because as soon as you hear on Twitter, maybe this player isn't playing, maybe this goalie is not starting, that's when to really jump in the bet because the line's going to move. Vegas is too smart. And the people who create the lines, especially at bet99.com, they're just way too smart to keep the line at where it is when they hear that the backup goalie who's played once in this whole playoff is coming in. So that is something really to watch into the betting world is when it comes to this series and the Tampa Bay series. And the COVID stuff, we'll see what happens in the Stanley Cup final. But the fact that a coach of Montreal and the GM of Vegas are both testing positive means that there's something else going on here. So really pay attention to that when you're putting down your money, and maybe don't put down a bet too far into the future on a certain game right now, because this is a situation that could be changing all the time. Yeah, good advice. And for any more Bet99 and sports betting advice, we've got the UFO show now right here. Wherever you're watching this, it is in the same place to find the UFO show, all live streamed on Thursday nights with Adam and Andy. And then whoever they bring on as a guest, as that changes every week. I wanted to kind of
before we wrap here, give a shout out to Hapson, our friends at Hapson. If you go to
Nice hat, Sean.
hapson.ca, yeah,
Nice
like
hat.
I've got terrible hair today, but like this is
Oh, that's sharp.
right? Like, so they've
Yeah,
got
looks
like
good.
actual skate laces. Of course, I moved it all wrong. And it comes out the side. It's really, really sharp, really comfortable hat. And they've got some great athletic athleisure wear as well. So if you go visit hapson.ca and use the promo code area51, you get 25% off store wide. So a huge discount from our friends there. And then inside Area 51 every week, right here, Sunday afternoons, we'll be joined by people from our network here, constantly expanding. We've got another podcast possibly joining us this week, knock on wood. So if you're
What
a
a tease.
basketball
What a
fan,
tease. What a tease.
yeah,
What a
if you're a
tease.
basketball fan, keep an eye open because it's gonna get fun here. We've got, before we jump out, we've got Vic asking Adam what your Twitter handle is. So if you want to drop
Looks like
that,
you just gained a follower. There.
yeah,
Yeah, it's at Adam K Blatt because I have such a long last name. So that's the Twitter.
perfect. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining Team Sean
Thanks,
versus
Sean.
Team Malcolm. I'm
Team
biased.
Sean.
I'm going to say
Team
Team
Sean.
Sean won.
I think Team
I'm
Sean won
calling it.
also. I think we made some good points.
Yeah, Malcolm's not here to defend it, so Team Sean all the way.
That's one
Thanks.
one, yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks so
Exactly.
much, guys. Have a great week.
Tweet the hashtags, guys. Tweet the hashtags.
Yeah, if you're Team Sean or Team Malcolm, I want to know. I want to know your
Yeah.
thoughts because Team Sean might have won here, maybe.
Maybe the
But I
people
want
on
to
Twitter
see
are
what
telling
you
us where
think.
it is.
We'll just
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, we got
Pauline Warren,
Oh.
Sean. I think any
my
relation
mom.
there?
Mwah. Team Sean all the way.
Right on. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much,
Right on.
guys. And for also just quick plug, since we're throwing so many plugs out here, for UFO and for Adam and Andy's betting advice, you can go visit the website under the subheading betting. It is all embedded there. The episodes are embedded there. The boosted odds are going to be put there. All the links to Bet99 and Monkey Knife Fight all are there. So it couldn't be any easier. It's all in one spot for you guys. So
And use our links. You get $600.
yeah, $600 sign up bonus, like free money, man. But we're all about making you money. So
I used it. It's good. Get some money in your
Awesome.
bank account.
cha-ching. All right.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.